Okay. Well, I'd like to move on to our second questioner, who's Camilla. I think in the second row here, if we could get the mic to her. And Camilla, what's your question?
Hi, my name's Camilla de Berg and I'm a postgraduate student at UWE studying urban design. I'm currently doing my dissertation on community involvement and the barriers that kind of can impede its effectiveness. And I would like to ask the panel, what are the best methods to use to get optimum results?
Okay, thank you very much. Jeff, you've probably got more experience than the rest of us put together in this area. What would your advice be here?
Okay, well, I'm afraid it's one of those questions to which the first answer has to be, if I were you, I wouldn't start from here. In other words, I always use the analogy of cooking. If you're going to cook some meal, unless you're Heston Blumenthal, you're not going to go straight to the fridge and the larder and pick out a random set of ingredients and hope you make a sensible recipe from it. So the key to success in any good involvement process is you've got to have an overall process that stitches it together. So you need to start there. There's got to be a coherent recipe and process all the way through. As in the planning legislation now, you've got to start that early. You've got to get in on day one. It's called front loading, which I always thought was a good idea until someone said it reminded them of washing machines. But getting in early is really important. It's got to be a continuous process all the way through. It's got to be very inclusive. You've got to make sure that, in a sense, everybody has their voice through the process in different ways and different times. You've got to have an information base, which is absolutely common to everybody. Otherwise, you're just arguing about very, very basic bits of information. What isn't even the site sometimes gets argued about. So that's got to be shared. There needs to be feedback to people all the way through the process so that they know what's happened, they hear about it, and even if their comments haven't been taken on board, it's shown why they haven't been. And in the end, there needs to be something that sums it all up at the end, some sort of overall report that pulls it together. And it's only when you've got a sense of that overall recipe that you ask the question, therefore, what methods, and it must be S, methods, there cannot be one method, what methods are now appropriate to deliver that particular recipe that you've got there. And they do need to be interesting, they need to be exciting, they need to be diverse. Different people respond at different times in the process, in different ways to different methods, and there are thousands of them out there. Don't get seduced by the sort of captioned methods like inquiry by design and planning for real that offer you a packaged version of this. This is a much more complicated process of choosing them, but they really must be chosen, those methods, once you've got your overall recipe and your process in place. They only hang together at that point. A method is only as good as the process into which you put it.
Right, thanks very much, Jeff. Alison, I wonder if you could respond, because you've got a lot of experience of working in Bristol with neighbourhoods.
Yes, it's a difficult one. The process that we've been trying to help grow is getting the community better able to respond to planning through helping them understand more about the process. And one of the things that the network's done is to go out to communities that at the moment have not been involved in planning, or if they have been involved in planning, it's been at the sort of negative end of it, which is responding to planning applications and trying to help them understand how they can get better involved in the process. And one of the things that really we've been pushing is that there are a lot of planning groups out in Bristol that are community activists, if you like, people that want to get involved, as Barry says, the usual suspects, who want to stand up and try and make a difference for their community. And as one of the administrators of the Planning Network, we've been trying to get them better at representing their communities, though representation is another complicated issue. It's how you can actually take, as a practitioner, the right group of people in the community and know that they are actually voicing what the rest of the community would say. And that is an incredibly difficult area. How do you know you're not just dealing with the people that don't want something built at the end of their garden, that actually want the best for the whole community? And that's something we grapple with the whole time. But one of the things that we think is very important is that the community involvement is with a group of people over an extended period of time so that they gradually learn more about what it is you're trying to do and can therefore their levels of response to you get better and better. So it's, as Jeff says that the idea of front loading, this very early involvement, is absolutely imperative, because you need to bring people along with the process, and just going along to them at the end and saying, right, we've done this design and we've done this local framework, what do you think, is no good. You've got to get them educated, brought along with you the whole time.
Thank you. Craig, just a brief one from you, and then I want to ask the audience if they've been on the receiving end of inappropriate approaches.
Well, I think there's a lot to be done here, and we've got to be careful that we don't just get caught up in the process of consultation, not to use that word, I apologise for that, but engage, because there are so many methods, so many ways of doing it. And if you look at systems thinking, there's inputs, processes and outputs, and the danger is that we obsess about the process and get an output, but the key thing to get the best results is to work out what the outcome needs to be. Where are we trying to get to through engagement? What is it we're trying to achieve? So I would always say, the front loading, the inputs, know all the processes you need to go through, but outputs, if it's a set of photographs of some engagement processes of a video, isn't where we really need to be. So I was always say, define what are outcomes. Where do we want to get on engagement? And that will help you order everything else through that, through all three parts.
Okay, thank you. Anybody in the audience want to come back on anything they've heard? Could I just ask Camilla then, what have you been finding in your research?
Been finding out a lot. I mean, it depends whether we're going to stay on this topic, but certainly from kind of going to some workshops myself, I find very much kind of where people have maybe produced plans too late, and it does provoke a very yes or no reaction in people if you just put a plan in front of them, and quite a lot of the time it can be no, and people don't like that. And in terms of actually kind of participation methods and going to workshops, I think a lot of people still get stuck by the use of kind of jargon and vocabulary, and a lot of people don't understand. I mean, I'm not from a planning background, and yet I'm kind of trained in architecture and urban design, and I still don't understand quite a lot of the time when people are just reeling off abbreviations, so goodness knows how people who aren't trained are supposed to know. So I think that's a really big barrier as well.
Thanks very much. Jeff, you wanted to come back briefly?
Well, just to add, I mean, the most effective methods are those which are not dependent upon professional language, professional jargon, professional input. You maybe throw it at people, but you do it in such a way that they can come back in their terms. And I think Alison raised one issue, I wonder whether to raise, which is that this is a mutual education process. It's the professionals learning and understanding more about what people think, they believe in, what they value, what they believe is important. But also, there is that community issue, knowing about what is appropriate, where it can go, how they have to weigh their views up against the views of others, how that they sit as part of a wider network, communities within Bristol, what's best for Bristol as well as what's right for the community. And you need methods that actually really are mutual two-way methods in those things and are not determined, as so many of them are. I mean, I have to say it, I've been through situations where if you tell me who's running a particular consultation event, I can draw the outcome before they have the event.
Okay. Barry.
I think Jeff's right. I mean, process is so important here, and seeing methods in that context. I mean, for me, for example, we tend to think about methods as the things we do once we've got the community engaged and enthused and thinking about wanting to get involved. But actually, it's a really uphill struggle getting, large segments of the community involved in the first place. So we've got to think about methods of encouraging people, infusing people, publicising, marketing community involvement, as well as those methods we use once we've got them. The other thing is it depends on the purpose of your community involvement, doesn't it? I mean, if you're simply wanting to consult with people on an idea that you've already got, ask their opinion, do you like it or not? Well, then you have one set of methods. But if you genuinely want to empower people, then you've got to look elsewhere, and different methods come into play.